Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're venturing pretty far afield, all the way to the Isle of Skye in Scotland.
That's right. And there's a compelling reason, some recent archaeology that's, well, it's making us rethink the very early human story in Britain.
Exactly. So your mission today, essentially, is to get a quick but solid grasp on why these new finds are shaking things up.
Yeah, we're looking at evidence that really challenges some long-held ideas about who is living where, especially during a time of pretty dramatic environmental change.
Okay. And we're drawing on a couple of key sources for this, a news piece from the Science X Network, and the original research published in the Journal of Quaternary Science.
Both lay out the details of these discoveries on Skye.
And just to grab your attention right away, this new find, it's the most northerly evidence ever found in Britain for a specific group called the Ahrensburgian culture.
On Skye, which is, quite a long way from their usual haunts in Northern Europe.
It really is. So let's dig into why this is such a big deal. First, we probably need a bit of context, right? We need to go back in time.
Definitely. We're talking about the very end of the Upper Paleolithic period, and specifically a phase called the Younger Dryas.
Ah, the Younger Dryas.
Yeah.
I remember this. It wasn't a smooth warming after the Ice Age, was it?
Not at all. Think of it as a major cold snap, like the climate system hitting reverse for a bit. Roughly between 12,900 and 11,700 years ago, glaciers actually started expanding again.
Right, a real climate curveball. And the thinking, especially for Scotland, was that it would have been just too harsh, too forbidding for people to really settle there long-term during that cold spell.
That was the prevailing view, yeah. Sustained settlement seemed unlikely, given the already tough landscape and the intense cold.
Okay, so bring in the Ahrensburgian culture. Who were they exactly?
So these were hunter-gatherer groups active towards the end of the Paleolithic, originating mainly in northern mainland Europe. They're known archaeologically for their very specific types of flint tool,
Tools like what?
especially their spear or maybe arrow points. They have this characteristic projection at the base called a tang, made it easier to attach securely to a shaft. And they're often linked with reindeer hunting.
Okay, so Ice Age winding down, then bam, deep freeze returns. And it's right in this period, the Younger Dryas, that we find traces of these reindeer hunters.
Right.
Way up on the Isle of Skye.
Precisely. That's the discovery at a place called South Quidrak.
Tell us about that site. What did they actually find?
South Quidrak is right up in the north of Skye, and what they found is what archaeologists call a lithic scatter, basically a spread of stone tools and the bits left over from making them, like an ancient workshop floor almost.
And the important part.
The important part is that the scatter included those signature Ahrensburgian tanged points, plus other tools like blades and things called burins, sharp little tools, probably for a working bone or antler. The whole toolkit screams Ahrensburgian.
Okay, and what were the tools made from? Anything special there?
Yes, actually. Most of them were made from baked mudstone. And crucially, it seems to be locally sourced baked mudstone.
Locally sourced. So that implies they weren't just passing through with tools made somewhere else.
Exactly. It suggests they knew the area, knew where to find good quality stone. They had access to a reliable local resource.
So let's just underline this. Again, this is the furthest north in all of Britain we've ever found evidence of these people.
By quite a margin. Yes.
That really stretches our understanding of their range, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Suggests they could cope with environments we assumed were, well, off limits.
Absolutely. It pushes back against that idea of Scotland being largely empty during the Younger Dryas. It shows a higher degree of resilience, of adaptability than we maybe gave them credit for.
Is there direct dating on these specific tools?
That's a good point. The Ahrensburgian artifacts themselves at South Quidrak haven't been directly dated, say, with radiocarbon. Their age is inferred partly because they were found alongside later Mesolithic material at the same site. So the association gives us a time frame. But yeah, direct dates would be the gold standard. Still, the tool types are very diagnostic.
Okay, understood. So that's the Ahrensburgian presence. But you mentioned another find on Skye, these stone alignments at Sconser. What's that about?
Right. Shifting gears a bit. Sconser is more central on Skye, and the find is in the intertidal zone. You know, the part of the beach that's covered and uncovered by the tide.
Okay. What did they find there?
Around 20 circular arrangements of stones. They're not huge, maybe 3 to 5 meters across. And the really interesting thing is you can only see them during extreme low tides.
Wow, so they're underwater most of the time.
Eh.
How far below sea level are we talking?
They sit between roughly 1.8 and 4.1 meters below the current average sea level.
Which tells us?
It tells us they must have been built when the sea level was significantly lower than it is today.
Makes sense. Any idea what they were used for? You said stone circles, but not like Stonehenge, right?
No, nothing like that. The leading idea, based on comparisons with similar looking things in Scandinavia from the early Holocene, that's the period right after the Younger Dryas, is that they might be fish traps.
Fish traps,
Mhm.
like corralling fish as the tide went out.
Potentially. Or some other kind of structure for exploiting resources in that tidal zone. Tidal hunting structures, perhaps.
And can we date these? Do they line up with the Ahrensburgian people at South Quidra?
Well, based on elevation surveys and modeling sea level change, the best estimate puts their construction around 11,000 years ago.
So that's after the main Younger Dryas cold snap, right?
Yeah,
In the early Holocene.
exactly. A time when we know sea levels were lower.
Hmm.
But, and this is important, they haven't found any diagnostic artifacts inside these stone circles. Nothing to definitively say Ahrensburgian or link them to any specific culture.
Ah, okay. So the timing is suggestive of early post-glacial activity,
Mm-hmm.
but no direct cultural link proven yet.
Correct. Intriguing, but separate evidence for now.
Okay, so let's try and connect the dots. We've got confirmed Ahrensburgian tools way up north during the cold period, and these slightly later mysterious stone circles possibly for fishing. What are the big takeaways when we put this together?
Well, first off, it significantly expands the known map of where people were living in Britain towards the end of the Paleolithic, much further north than we generally assumed.
And it really speaks to their adaptability, doesn't it? Surviving, maybe even thriving, on Skye during the Younger Dryas. That's remarkable.
It really is. It shows a capacity to cope with extreme climate shifts in a pretty rugged landscape. Which then makes you wonder, how did they even get there?
Yeah, that's a good question. Did they come across Doggerland, that land bridge from Europe, and then navigate Scotland's mountains and lochs? It sounds like quite a journey.
The researchers discuss possibilities, maybe routes north or south of the remaining ice sheets. And importantly, we have hints of early human presence on other Scottish islands too, like Tiree, Orkney, Islay.
Implying what? That boats weren't necessarily out of the question.
It certainly suggests that crossing stretches of water wasn't an insurmountable barrier. Some level of maritime capability seems likely.
Interesting. And what about their lifestyle? We associate Ahrensburgian with reindeer, but Skye. Maybe different resources were key.
That's a strong possibility. While reindeer hunting was typical elsewhere, the coastal setting at South Quidra, plus the potential fish traps at Sconser later on, points towards making use of marine resources too. Fish, seals, seabirds.
A broader diet.
Probably. Evidence from other Ahrensburgian sites in Europe also suggests they ate more than just reindeer fish, waterfowl, maybe plants. They were likely quite flexible.
And that local baked mudstone again. It fits with that picture of flexibility and local knowledge, right?
Absolutely. Knowing where to find that specific mudstone, the source is apparently at a place called Ancoran, some distance away on the northeast coast, and choosing to use it at South Quidra on the west coast.
Suggests they knew the island.
Yes, it implies familiarity with the landscape, deliberate choices about where to camp, probably based on a whole range of available resources, food by the coast or rivers, maybe pigments like ochre, which is also found nearby. Real resourcefulness.
Okay, so stepping back, why does all this matter? Why should you, listening now, care about these old stones and sites on Skye?
Because it genuinely changes the first chapter of human history for Scotland and for Britain more broadly. It shows early humans were incredibly resilient, far more adaptable to climate change than maybe we thought.
And it opens up new places to look for evidence, right?
Yeah.
Places previously dismissed as too harsh or remote.
Exactly. Onshore, maybe even offshore, in areas now underwater, it encourages us to look again.
And Skye itself, being this dramatic island at Europe's edge, it becomes a kind of fascinating laboratory for studying human adaptation.
It really does. A unique setting to explore how people coped and innovated at the fringes, environmentally speaking.
Right. So let's try and boil this down, the key takeaways from our deep dive.
Okay. 1. Clear evidence of Ahrensburgian people on Skye during the Younger Dryas cold period much further north than expected. 2. Those intriguing stone circles at Sconser, likely from the slightly later early Holocene, hinting at coastal exploitation.
And 3.
And 3. Taken together, these force us to rethink early human migration, their incredible adaptability to harsh climates, and how they use diverse resources in a rapidly changing world.
For me, the real aha moment here is just how tough and innovative these early people were. We sometimes picture them just barely surviving, but this suggests exploration, problem solving, setting up shop in challenging places, even when the climate was throwing curveballs.
That's a great way to put it. They weren't just passive victims of climate change.
Definitely not. Which leads to a final thought for you, our listener, to maybe chew on. If people could make a go of it on Skye back then, what other impossible places might early humans have reached?
Places perhaps now hidden beneath the waves due to sea level rise, or other environments we currently deem too extreme for early settlement.
Exactly. What does this resilience on Skye tell us about that fundamental human drive to explore, to adapt, to push into new territories no matter the obstacles? Something to think about.